Hello Africa and the world, thank you immensely for joining us on this time consecrated to news over 4U Television Africa. To kick off this newscast, we take you to the Central African country of Chad, where Chad's transitional government in less than 48 hours appointed veteran opposition figure Saleh Kep Zabo to head an interim administration of national union. He will replace Albert Pahimi Padaki, who resigned to pave way for a new government. The complete story is in the following reports. Former journalist Kep Zabo, 75 years of age, ran 4 times for the presidency against Déby's father, Idriss Déby Itno, who was killed during an operation against rebels in April 2021 and was succeeded by a military government headed by his son, a 38-year-old 5-star general. The transitional council had originally declared it would restore civilian rule after 18 months in power, and Déby had at first promised he would not take part in the future elections. But as the 18-month period neared, the nationwide forum staged by Déby reset the clock, pushing back elections onto October 2024. Last weekend, it approved that new 24-month time frame for holding elections, named Déby transitional president for the interim, and declared he could run for the polls. Déby was sworn in on Monday for a new phase of the transition, vowing to name a government of national union within days. The outgoing premier was a 55-year-old political veteran Albert Pahimi Padaki, who had served for 18 months and had also been prime minister under Déby's father, formally resigned on Tuesday alongside his government. We move away from Chad and now we are in the western part of the African continent, where the drafting commission for the new constitution submitted to the president of the Malian transition, Colonel Assimi Goïta, the preliminary draft of the constitution on October 11, 2022. The text submitted to the president of the transition will be transmitted to the Council of Ministers before its appearance in Parliament. The rest of the story with you.
According to the chairman of the Constitution Drafting Commission, Fuseni Samake, the text will be submitted to the Council of Ministers before its passage to the Transitional Parliament.
The adoption of a new constitution will be a crucial step in the process of rebuilding the state. The Commission for the Drafting of the New Constitution expresses the ardent wish that the project will be shared and accepted.
The great oral of the document will undoubtedly be the constitutional referendum scheduled in principle for March 2023. For the president of the military transition, the adoption of this text will mark a new beginning for Mali.
The submission of the draft of the new constitution is the only one stage in the process, because soon only the sovereign people will be called to a referendum to decide on the document. By adopting a new constitution, it is a founding legal act of Mali Kura that the people will have sovereignly put down.
In addition to the constitutional ballot, legislative and presidential elections are also expected for a return to civil order in the country. But we will have to wait theoretically until 2024. Colonel Assimi Goïta, who overthrew civilian power in August 2020 and has since been sworn in as president, said that the common hope for a renewed democracy as well as a better organized state that lives up to national and international challenges is based on this preliminary draft, according to his services.
Thank you, Jeff. Also, for that report, we now talk bilateral relations, where we are now saying that Cameroon and Nigeria requested to join Côte d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative, a joint body spearheading the interest of the two countries in the cocoa trade, the head of the initiative, Alex Adzanvo, said on Wednesday. The initiative was set up after a 2018 declaration by Ivory Coast and Ghana, the world's first and second largest cocoa producers, unwillingness to define a common sustainable cocoa strategy that could raise prices set to the farmers. It was created with the view of including other African countries, and Cameroon and Nigeria have sent representatives, of course, as they were invited to the meeting to begin the process of joining the initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, we now take you to talk climate change on the African continent and the globe at large, where climate change experts from the African continent say African countries should arrive at the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference COP27 with an agenda to reframe the climate change debate to better benefit the continent, which is the most vulnerable to the impact of climate change, yet contribute low greenhouse gas emissions. Africa is home to some 17% of the world's population, but contributes to 3% of its carbon emissions. From November 7 to November 18, 2022, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, will be hosting global leaders at the COP Summit, which will be a World Leaders Summit for Climate Change. We now move away from climate change to talk health on the African continent, where the World Health Organization chief Ghebreyesus Adhanom, during a virtual meeting, said that a clinical trial of vaccines that could potentially combat the Sudan strain of Ebola driving in the outbreak in Uganda could start within weeks. Take a listen to this report. Uganda and the whole of East Africa can now see light at the end of a tunnel in the fight against Ebola. World Health Organization Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said a clinical trial of vaccines potentially combat the Sudan strain of Ebola, driving an outbreak in Uganda that could start within weeks. The East African country declared an outbreak of Ebola on the 20th of September and said infections were being caused by the Sudan strain. So far, Uganda's health ministry has confirmed a total of 54 Ebola cases and 19 deaths, including health workers. They have been worried the spread of the infection in the country could be difficult to contain since there is no vaccine of the strain. For now, the infections are concentrated in a cluster of 5 districts in central Uganda. In a virtual address to a meeting of Africa regional health officials in Uganda's capital, Kampala, Tedros said several vaccines are currently being developed that could deal with the Sudan strain. 2 of those vaccines could be put in clinical trial in Uganda in the coming weeks, pending regulatory and other approvals from the Ugandan government, he said. Our primary goal now is to rapidly control and contain its outbreak to protect neighboring districts as well as neighboring countries, explained Tedros. Tedros did not give details of the vaccine due for trial, including the names or which firm developed them. Ebola, a hemorrhagic fever, mainly spread through contact with bodily fluids of an infected person. Symptoms of this viral disease include intense weakness, muscle pain, headaches, and a sore throat, vomiting, diarrhea, and rashes, amongst others. Although it has no vaccine, the WHO has previously said the Sudan strain is less transmissible and has shown less fatality rate in previous outbreaks than Ebola Zaire. We move away from Ebola this time around to talk breast cancer. Just to recall that October is considered as the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Breast cancer over the years continues to be a menace to the African continent and of course the globe at large, with it accounting for 28% of all cancers and 20% of all cancer deaths in women and about 11% in men. Is Africa really up to the task when it comes to combating these deadly disease? Find out in the following reports. Breast cancer is cancer that forms in the cells of the breast and is globally a menace that afflicts mostly women and a public health burden in sub-Saharan Africa, as it accounts for high rates of global cancer-related deaths in women. Although the disease incidence in Africa seems lower, mortality rates are disproportionately high in comparison to high-income countries. Doctors say Breast cancer occurs when breast cells begin to grow abnormally. These cells divide more rapidly than healthy cells do and continue to accumulate, forming a lump or mass. While the records of cancer linked to gene mutations pass through generations of a family. Statistics illustrate in Africa, breast cancer is responsible for 28% of all cancers, 20% all cancer deaths in women, and about 11% in male. Incidence rates are still generally low in Africa, estimated by 35 per 100,000 women in most countries, as compared to over 90 to 120 per 100,000 in Europe or North America. Precise incidence figures in Africa are lacking given the absence of cancer registration in most African countries. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, some of the symptoms are lumps in the breast or underarm, thickening or swelling of part of the breast, irritation or dimpling of breast skin, pulling in of the nipple or pain in the nipple area, nipple discharge other than breast milk including blood, any change in the size or shape of the breast, pain in any area of the breast. Nonetheless, breast cancers could be treated depending on the type of breast cancer, its stage and grade, and whether the cancer cells are sensitive to hormones. Amidst all these, one can't help but ask if Africa is up to the task.
Is Africa truly up to the task? Is on that report on breast cancer that we draw down the curtains of these midday newscasts over For You Television. I have been Jix Nabase for presentation. Do have a great day in company of our programs.